to dive into it. You'll also be able to read my review, which will be up in the next hour or so on Outkick. Encourage you also to check out the starting 11. I know that a lot of you, we got a lot of conflict now because HBO decided to put this on during football season. I know that a lot of you are out there watching Florida State LSU. I don't want to jinx it, but the picks are 8-1, and we've got FSU plus 3.5, and they are up fairly substantial right now on LSU late in the third quarter, maybe about to go 9-1. This is why you have to respect the picks. I've been saying it for a long time. Respect the picks. Respect the picks. This is maybe the ultimate respect the picks weekend. Fade the picks guy is dying. All of his bankroll gone in this incredible success. So we'll talk about that certainly tomorrow. Happy Labor Day in advance. I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. Okay, I still don't know who the bad guys are in the crab-eating what is it, the Stepstones, where we now have a 3-year war, effectively, that's been going on. Somehow Damon and Corliss, that entire crew, Valerian, has been unable to defeat their antagonist there. And so there is a desperate ploy made for help, which we'll get to in a moment. But in general, this episode was about, what else? Succession. And it feels almost a little bit like the other HBO show set in the present tense, which is, I think, the best show on HBO right now, Succession overall, which, of course, deals with who's going to take over the media empire in that episode. Here, the question is, who is going to sit on the Iron Throne? And so this is the third episode of Season 1, but we're continuing to skip around substantially. We've effectively covered 3 years of the show so far. We have a 2-year-old birthday party where we've got Queen Alicent, who is throwing a 2-year-old birthday party for their son, Aegon. And for King Viserys, this is a question of, is he going to stay committed to his daughter, Rhaenyra, or is he going to announce that his son, which is usually what happens in the kingdom, is going to be inheriting his throne? Rhaenyra is a teenage girl who is having her teenage moment as they ride in the royal carriage to the 2-year party. She says, "No one is here for me." She's previously been skipping the birthday party of her half-brother. You then have the queen, who used to be Alicent, her best friend, her maid of honor, who is now the queen, also pregnant with a second child. And Rhaenyra's own hand is a major part of this storyline, as Jason Lannister, of course, the Lannister family, which always pays its debt, is making a play for Princess Rhaenyra's hand to potentially take her to Casterly Rock, because he believes that it is a foregone conclusion that Aegon is now going to be the king. Meanwhile, there is a hunt going on, and potentially a white stag, which is a sign from the gods of great good fortune that they are tracking, that could be found on the 2-year-old's birthday party. And so we have a situation where Viserys is going to have to make a decision. He's getting drunk on the throne, sitting alone by himself, almost to go back to Ghostbusters 2, a Vigo the Carpathian look about him as he sits there on the throne by himself, drinking heavily. And what he's saying is basically that he has powerless over his 17-year-old. One of his advisors says daughters drive kings crazy. Probably a lot of you out there with daughters who are teenage daughters maybe feel the same way. And so the suggestion that is made by one of his advisors is that the king should marry Rhaenyra to a son of Corlys. In fact, the son of Corlys, because he angered Corlys by not marrying the 12-year-old daughter and solidifying that relationship. So we have Rhaenyra, who runs off on her own into the wild And we've got this guy, Kristen Cole, I believe is his name. It doesn't even sound like a real person's name. He's effectively a Jon Snow clone. They went and found the best-looking man in the kingdom to be able to play Kristen Cole. And so the two of them are out overnight. They're there in the middle of the night. A wild boar storms into their camp and nearly kills Princess Rhaenyra, except she is saved by Kristen. And then the next morning, as they wake up, she, by the way, then stabs the wild boar as many times as she can to cover herself in blood. Decides, hey, I'm not going to go wash myself off in this lake that is right there. Remains covered in blood, comes back to camp. Everybody's sitting around, and they're like, hey, there's the future queen who's rolling back into camp completely covered in blood. They also are standing overlooking the valley, and up comes that majestic white stag as Kristen pulls out his sword to go kill the white flag. Rhaenyra says simply no. Otto then argues. Otto, of course, is the hand of the king and also the grandfather of Aegon, that Alicent, as well as the king, must make the decision not to destroy the empire and put Aegon in as the next heir, as the oldest son of the lawful king. And the king says, I feel like I'm basically forever doomed to alienate one to favor another. You get the sense, as Shakespeare said, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, that he does not in any way want to be king, which is an interesting parallel, if only in the context of everybody else wants the job that he doesn't seem to really want himself, which is quite a bit different than Game of Thrones, where everybody was trying to become the king and sit on the Iron Throne. We get no suggestion, by the way, of his overall health-related conditions. Remember, that was a bit of a concern in Episode 1, faded in Episode 2. Nothing going on about it in Episode 3. He tells Rhaenyra, hey, I was promised to your mother when we were 10 and 7 years old, and eventually takes Alicent's advice and tells her that she can pick whoever she would like to wed, but he says, you must marry and multiply. Find one that pleases you as I did. Now, that was interesting because he's basically letting it be known that the reason why he picked Alicent, he didn't have a choice the first time with her mother. He did have a choice the second time, and he directly overlooked Lord Corlys and the union there that would have strengthened ties. But the key part here is, on your mother, I swear to you, on your mother's memory, you will not be supplanted, meaning that he has now pledged to Rhaenyra that you will be the heir to me on the Iron Throne, that there will be a queen that sits, and I am picking you over your son. Then he also takes Alicent's advice and sends, the king does, as a sign of mercy, note that he will be sending 10 ships and 2,000 men to try and end the war that he was not in favor of in the Stepstones with the crab people. Daemon attacks the messenger, furious to receive the word that his brother is loyal to him, and then decides that he will be the person to row alone, as has been suggested by Lord Corlys's brother, that he will row alone to the Death Beach, draw all of the soldiers out by pretending that he is going to surrender. He comes out with a white flag, pretends that he's going to offer his sword in surrender. Instead, just as the sword is prepared to be taken, he attacks, and that then brings everybody rolling out to try to fight him. And at that time, the rest of the army with Corlys and with Daemon attacks, and Daemon goes into the caves to kill the Crab Rebellion leader, chop him in half, and then carries out his body to effectively let it be known that they have won that rebellion. So, this is, I thought, vintage Thrones, wildly bloody, really graphic in terms of the battle scenes. What I would say in general about Game of Thrones that we are missing so far, there's no humor in House of the Dragon so far. There's nobody who is a light touch. There's no one who makes you laugh. There is no sort of effervescent quality that many different characters, I thought, in the original Game of Thrones series came to embody. There's no Tyrion Lannister with really witty and funny lines. It's all very ponderous. It's very melodramatic, and there's no lightening of the overall mood so far. In fact, I can't even think of anyone who plays in any capacity a comedic role. There's no moment, at least so far, that I can tell where you maybe laugh just a little bit. It just feels very, very intense. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're only going with one emotion, which is intensity, through the first 3 episodes, maybe there's people who are going to provide some of this comedic energy, some of this a little bit of relief from the intensity. That's what I would say is the biggest difference so far between the 2 shows. I would also argue that many of the characters feel like pale approximations of the originals. We've got a Jon Snow clone. We've got a Daenerys clone, except neither one of them are anywhere near as interesting. In fact, other than Daemon, I'm not sure there's a character right now who feels particularly compelling one way or the other through 3 episodes. Still a very well done show, very well done episode, but I think that's where I would argue we are paling in comparison to what was going on with Game of Thrones when it was kind of at its apex. Granted, first season, still developing a lot of the plot points, but as an example, I don't know why I should care about the crab guy. As spooky and scary as he may have looked, there were no stakes that I could tell for why I should care whether he succeeds or fails. It felt rushed to take us in here. It felt rushed to skip 3 years ahead. And the villainy of the crab creatures, whatever they were, was not paid off. There was no emotional investment for me in the battle. Still interesting to watch, but if you compare it to the great epic battle scenes that were set up in Game of Thrones, you really had a great feel for stakes. For instance, in Battle of the Bastards, compare how much that built up. Whereas here, it just feels like a massive battle where the stakes don't feel very significant to me in any grand degree. All right. I will be back tomorrow. I appreciate all of you. I now am going to finish watching LSU and Florida State. Then I'm going to finish writing up my review of Game of Thrones. I appreciate all of you. I hope you are enjoying this. I hope you had a fantastic time over the weekend so far. I hope you played all of our gambling bets. I'd probably have jinxed it by getting ahead of myself. Let's see. The latest is 17-10 now. And we got 13 minutes left to go. So we're sitting plus 10.5. Who knows how this could go. But here's the road, hopefully leading us to 9-1. I am Clay Travis. This has been my review of House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 3. Column going up shortly. See you guys tomorrow.